as was with my other video about Riot and Reddit having a collaboration to shadow ban content creators, there is a really big and easy trend to find within Riot Games, which is the fact that I think Riot actually hates content creators and users that create content around their titles or their games. And you could see this historically, like throughout the entirety of what Riot is in its totality. So I want to bring up an image before, not that one, but this one, of the GDC talk that Riot Light had, and this was in 2015, and he goes on to explain how user-generated content can produce negative and toxic effects, and then he goes into shadow banning, etc. And if you guys haven't seen the video, just go watch it. I'll link it in the description or something. But this goes further back, actually, with, well, what we had before with this post from Mark Merrill, and how basically he's talking to I Will Dominate, and he says, like grats on having a career revolving around the free game we made. And this was like a snarky comeback of, because I Will Dominate had said, yeah, well, bad people work for your company, etc. So it's clear that Riot has this weird culture surrounding how they feel about content creators and how they feel about user-generated content. And the funny thing about it is this goes way back even further in terms of Dota, because Dota was originally a user-generated piece of content, right? So it was a custom map for Warcraft 3 back in the day, Reign of Chaos, right? And then Frozen Throne. And that was entirely based off of the community, based off of user-generated content. And there were several different actual cool custom maps that were created in Warcraft 3. Ones that I remember were Footman Frenzy. You had Angels of the Arena. You had Eternal Conflict, which I thought was way fucking better than Dota, but here we are today. And the point is it's very ironic how the user-generated content then spawned League of Legends, because as we know, League of Legends was based off of Dota from Warcraft 3. And so, like, the company wouldn't be here at all without user-generated content. So, like, it's so ironic that Mark Merrill would make, a tweet like this, because it doesn't make any sense. So, but the point is, though, is that Riot had realized back then when they took the idea of Dota and made League of Legends that they can't allow that to happen with their IP property. They can't allow someone else to create a custom map or a custom game within League of Legends and then use that idea to generate their own game spawning off of that idea. That would destroy their game, just as how League of Legends destroyed Dota. So it's very funny that they have this stance against user-generated content, because it seems like they just want to hoard the gold pile like a fucking dragon in the mountain or something. So this goes back to now the present day, in the stance that Riot has, which has continued. It doesn't stop with Riot Light, or it doesn't stop with Mark Merrill doing that tweet. I think this was like 3 years ago, I want to say. But let's go ahead and take a look at what happened in GDC. And this games developer conference is just like a wealth of knowledge, because you get into like the actual thought process of these gaming companies and how they think or how they philosophize about their own games and their own titles. So this guy is his name is Westhart, sorry. And this was a talk that was done in 2021, in fact, just recently. And he is the head of player dynamics, which is just a reworked name of what Riot Light's position was, actually. And the lead of social systems, right? This is the same department. It's exactly the same, just the name changed, probably because it was tainted, right? Now, that's not to say that this guy is a bad guy. Like, I don't want to paint him as such, but you could still see the pervasiveness of Riot's stance with user-generated content. So we'll go ahead and play this clip and just let him talk about the idea of user-generated content here.
Well, it was a bit surprising how many of these types of behavior appeared in voice and text. Like before I even got, maybe 20 or 30 rows in, I could see that there's a bunch of behaviors that can appear just through these particular types of features. And when I dug.
By the way, this is why League of Legends doesn't support voice chat, in like the 5v5 sense. Because of this, because it's a form of user-generated content, right? So this is like going to the broadly abstract sense of what content is. And so, yes, text is user-generated content, you typing in the game, as well as voice chat. Voice chat is user-generated content, but you'll see further into his point as to why this is problematic.
Even deeper to understand what was going on or where these things might appear, I saw a theme, right? User-generated content. It really can facilitate all kinds of negative, inappropriate behavior.
Notice how, like, Riot has consistently done this. This is 2021, guys. And this guy's main focus, at least what I think, is Valorant, in fact. Valorant and, like, Wild Rift. He actually manages basically all of Riot's games, and as far as leading their social systems, right, which is what Riot Lite did, but he's head of player dynamics, right? But this is the philosophy that they have, is the fact that user-generated content has the potential to cause negative behaviors. And you could see this wheel that he has here of the representation of exactly what can happen with user-generated content. You could have extremism, hate, harassment, dangerous speech, aggravation, antisocial actions. It's clear that this philosophy still is in line with today. And so the reason why I'm sharing this with you guys is it's the fact that this alludes to what further practices maybe that Riot will do as far as limiting user-generated content. Now, remember back in the day when Riot had said that creating a sandbox mode would be toxic? Remember that whole debacle? And everyone was just like, what? That's stupid. How is that possible? Well, apply it now to what I've just told you, user-generated content. By having a sandbox mode, that would allow users to then generate content, right? Think of Vandrel, for instance, the famous guy that does bug hunting and stuff. But not only that, think about the practice tool that we have now, right? And the fact that you can only be a single player within that. Just imagine if you could do 5 people or 10 people within that particular mode. Well, then you could set up certain scenarios to where you could train, dragon fights or whatever. And this is something that pro players have asked for forever. The reason why that doesn't exist in Riot's game is because it would allow people to create, custom mini games and basically just create a whole nother universe of exactly how they want to play League of Legends or interact with League of Legends, and it not being totally in control with what Riot wants you to do or how to play with their game. This is also, too, why Valorant doesn't have a map editor. Why do you think there is no user-generated maps? It's because, once again, that is user-generated content. That is the same concept of what happened in Warcraft 3 when Dota was created, and then Riot took that idea of Dota and created League of Legends. They don't want that to happen. They don't want the user experience to have a variety of ranges of experience as far as like a good experience or a bad experience. Both in at least Riot's idea or Riot's mindset is that if a user has a great experience with user-generated content, they're just going to go to the user-generated content. They're going to forget about Riot Games. Now, if they have a bad experience with user-generated content, well, they're going to be like, fuck this entire game, and they're going to stop playing, like Valorant or League of Legends or whatever. So it's actually a decent idea or philosophy to implement within all your titles. I understand why they do it, but it also does just limit the experience potential of what a user or a player can have. Now, let's go into the content creation aspect of this and the fact that it seems like Riot has had typical animosity against content creators, from banning content creators from like the subreddit, or having like odds and ends with streamers and whatnot, and also too with like freelancers, right, for casters and stuff. Now you see that whole debacle of negotiating salaries and kind of keeping them at odds or at ends, because they know that the personalities themselves actually have a significant amount of power. So that's why they want to quell that. It's because that is a form of user generated content to begin with, because, well, what happens if a caster then does their own YouTube channel and does their own Twitch, etc., which is also too why previously Riot employees weren't allowed to actually have a Twitch channel, or I think it was a YouTube channel as well too. So all of these things point back to what I was talking about, user-generated content. You think of journalists and how basically they've disliked journalists the entire time. I mean, a funny side tangent. I remember it was Theon, the journalist that was formerly from ESPN. Now I believe he's at Upcomer. And how he had mentioned on Twitter and also in the League of Legends press room that it sucked that Overwatch and Blizzard actually had catering, like food catering for the press, right? So they would have like sandwiches or like whatever, whereas Riot, all they had were like, I think back then it was like chips, and that was it. And I think I was talking to Theon before, and I'm like, what? Like, you guys get catered lunch over there? He's like, yeah, like even one time we had like steak. I'm like, what the fuck? Like steak? Hey, dog, that's nuts. But once that cat was out the bag, then Riot started to provide food catering to all the press. And it's just like, these little tit for tat things is that it just more and more points towards Riot's bitterness of user generated content, of journalists, of streamers, of freelance casters, like of everyone, of people that want a sandbox mode or maybe a custom map editor in Valorant. Like, all of these things point, and then of course handing over the keys of the Valorant subreddit over to the League of Legends moderators, because they're in cahoots with the League of Legends moderators. So like, all of this is just to control user generated content. And I find that like just kind of appalling and absurd, because they're living in like this weird dystopian world to where they want to control every single aspect of their game or of their IP, which is also too why there is no third party tournament organizers. Like, you guys see the whole point, like all of this. And of course, this presentation that was done in 2012 just blatantly outright says that user generated content can lead to bad things. So yeah, I just found it very interesting, and this is just more proof of Riot's animosity towards content creators.